Good morning and welcome to the Sunday morning service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel Allende, Mexico. I'm the Reverend Tom Rosiello, minister of the fellowship, and we are so glad that you've decided to join us this morning and for at least the next hour be part of this beloved community. We also hope you'll stay on Zoom after the service for conversation with new and old friends, and I'll tell you more about how that works at the end of the service. We want you to know that you are welcome as you are, regardless of race, creed, ethnicity, cultural identity, age, gender identification, sexual orientation, or theological belief. We know that as a community, we are enriched by all kinds of diversity. You're also welcome to be part of this community no matter where you are physically located at this time. Although we have our physical presence in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, every Sunday, people join in this service from other parts of Mexico and all over the United States, Canada, and beyond. I'm coming to you from Massachusetts, and our guest minister for this service is in Long Island. That guest minister is the Reverend Ned Wight. Reverend Wight was here in person just before the COVID lockdown started, and it's a pleasure to welcome him back. Although officially retired, he keeps an active schedule of service to our faith tradition. He's chair of the board of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, partnering with grassroots organizations to champion human rights at home in the U.S. and abroad. Previous to this, he was executive director of the Beach Program, a Unitarian Universalist organization that gives generous grants for social justice work. He is no stranger to parish ministry, having served several congregations as both a settled and an interim minister. A lover of music, Ned regularly sings in the choir for General Assembly, and a lover of history, he lives at Cedarmere, the historic home of William Cullen Bryant, and he also serves on the board of directors of the organization that preserves and promotes that piece of history. And now before we bring on Ned, we go to our President Dan for a message and an update from the COVID task force.
Good morning. I'm Dan Neuspiel, president of your fellowship, and I add my welcome to all of you. I have a few thoughts from our COVID-19 task force. We've heard a lot recently about the Delta virus variant, which has become widespread in all of our communities and has contributed to a surge of COVID cases here in San Miguel and elsewhere. What are the facts we know at this time? First, the Delta strain is highly contagious. How much so? Well, it's as contagious as chickenpox and more so than Ebola, smallpox, and the flu. It's at least twice as contagious as the strain that we experienced last year. Second, though vaccines have been very effective in preventing serious illness and death from the Delta strain, we now know that even vaccinated people can be infected with and without symptoms, and they can spread this virus to others. At least one of our own vaccinated members has gotten sick with COVID in the past week. Third, there are reports that those infected with the Delta variant may have more severe cases of COVID, especially those who are unvaccinated. So we recommend that even vaccinated people should now wear effective face masks, especially in places like San Miguel, where cases are surging and vaccination levels are low. You should mask up in your home if you have visitors or household workers with unvaccinated or uncertain vaccine status, or when you answer the door. And outside your home, wear a mask if there's any chance you'll be closer than 6 feet or 2 meters from anyone with unvaccinated or uncertain vaccine status. Masking is especially important during shopping, medical visits, or other indoor activities. Now, many of us are feeling discouraged or depressed about this new surge of cases, and we all struggle to maintain our safety precautions, especially when they conflict with our personal desires for social interaction. Our task force would like to hear from you about your experiences in this regard. Please send your stories to Bonnie McDowell at the email in the chats, And we'll try to include some excerpts in upcoming COVID task force announcements. Be safe and well, my friends. Now we go to Tom Rosiello and our guest minister, the Reverend Ned Wight, with opening words and chalice lighting.
The opening words that Ned and I will share from you are by Clinton Lee Scott. From the east comes the sun, bringing a new and unspoiled day.
It has already circled the earth and looked upon distant lands and faraway people.
It has passed over mountain ranges and the waters of the seven seas.
It has shone upon laborers in the fields, into the windows of homes and shops and factories.
It has beheld proud cities with gleaming towers.
And also the hovels of the poor.
It has been witness to both good and evil, the works of honest men and women in the conspiracy of knaves.
It has seen marching armies, bomb-blasted villages, and the destruction that wasteth at noon.
Now, unsullied from its tireless journey, it comes to us, messenger of the morning,
harbinger of a new day. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. Please join me now in singing hymn number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere.
Please join me and Diana Amaya in reciting our spoken covenant, which should appear on your screen. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
Although we certainly are an outward-looking congregation, our ministry to each other is also critical, especially in these times. If you're in need of spiritual support or some physical assistance at this time, please know that the professional ministry and the incredible volunteer efforts of our care team are here for you. Just drop us an email and let us know what challenges you're facing, and we will get back to you. As part of our ministry to each other, our greater community, and the world, we set aside a time in our service for members and friends to share significant joys, sorrows, and concerns. If you'd like to share something in a future service, please just email it to me. If there's a joy, sorrow, or concern that you've not emailed but wish to share in today's service, please feel free to type it into the chat now. As we speak each joy, sorrow, or concern, we'll light a candle, indicating that that person, that prayer, that thought is with us in community this morning. We light this first candle for Ann Gear. Ann met with her family for a reunion on the West Coast last week. All the members of her family were vaccinated and they followed all the proper protocols. Yet she, her daughter, and several relatives came down with COVID. Luckily, the cases have not been too serious. She and her daughter remain quarantined in her sister's house and cannot travel home. They are getting better, but please send them your healing thoughts and prayers and support. This candle is lit by the COVID task force with these words. We wish to light a candle of support for our UUF family, our community, and all those who are disheartened and confused by the resurgence of the COVID virus. Our hopes for open gatherings have been delayed, and we share a sense of frustration and discouragement. Still, we have faith that our UU commitment to mutual support and love will help us overcome these challenges together until we can gather again. This is a candle of concern that comes from many of you and expressed slightly differently, but it's a candle of concern for our environment and the many effects of climate change that we are witnessing this summer. We're particularly concerned with the raging wildfires that threaten the homes and health of so many. This candle is a personal one. Yesterday, I officiated my dad's memorial service held outdoors at his graveside here in Massachusetts. The weather was perfect, and it was a great opportunity to be with many relatives and friends I have not seen in quite some time. I also want to thank all of you who have sent notes of support since my dad's passing. They're much appreciated. Finally, I'd light this candle for all those joy, sorrows, and concerns that have been typed into chat or that remain unexpressed this morning. We hold them all in our hearts. Many of us have been harboring fears in the midst of these difficult times, perhaps relieved for a while, but then coming back with the new virus strains. I've thought about fear and the power it has in our lives. And these words from the poet Wendell Berry have come to mind. I invite you to take them with you into a time of reflection and meditation. Wendell Berry writes, I go among the trees and sit still. All my stirrings become quiet around me like circles on water. My tasks lie in their places where I left them, asleep like cattle. Then what I'm afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in, it leaves it. The fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its song.
Good morning. My name is John Simsarian, and I am a member of the Social Action Committee. I'm spending the summer in the northeast corner of Vermont, near the Canadian border of Quebec, the ancestral home of the indigenous Abenaki. This year, the fellowship is continuing the long-standing tradition and policy of providing at least 1/2 of its budget to help fund nonprofit organizations in San Miguel addressing issues of poverty. One of these 12 organizations is Caminos de Agua, with the mission to improve human health and community well-being through adequate and affordable access to clean water. The upper Rio Laja watershed stretches across Guanajuato State, including San Miguel de Allende. This aquifer is dramatically declining. Wells are going dry, and the remaining water may contain 12 times or more of the recommended limits for arsenic and fluoride, known to cause dental fluorosis, painful skeletal fluorosis, cognitive, developmental, and learning disabilities in children, and several types of cancer. The cause of this crisis is unsustainable over-extraction of groundwater, mainly for large-scale agriculture production, which exports to the United States. This has driven the water table down from a couple dozen meters to more than 200 meters. The groundwater levels continue to drop by a staggering 2 to 3 meters per year. Caminos de Agua works in partnership with local communities to create long-term sustainable water solutions. Their work includes production and distribution of ceramic filters, community-based rainwater harvesting systems, and treatment systems. Our fellowship funds a community outreach and education specialist to help with implementation of these important community projects. When Doña Esperanza was young, there was plenty of good water for everyone in her rural village, with just 3 shallow wells serving the entire community. But as the water table dropped, these shallow wells dried up, and the community installed a well 10 times deeper. But that deep well also went dry, and the village was again without water. To survive, families filled plastic tanks at distant villages or irrigation wells with water which can have extremely high levels of arsenic and fluoride. So Doña Esperanza and her neighbors organized, and Caminos de Agua helped them build their first rainwater harvesting system, which provided some residents with safe and healthy drinking water for the first time in years. With the help of Caminos de Agua, the village now has 20 rainwater harvesting systems and dozens of ceramic filters in schools, homes, and at the community church. This is just one example of the ongoing work of Caminos de Agua. Donations to our fellowship supports not only the fellowship, but through our grants, we help to change lives and save lives. So during the upcoming pause in the service, or immediately after the service, please go to our donation link, which you can find in the chat box, or at our website, uufsma.org. Thank you for being generous today. The offering will now be collected and gratefully received.
like to share a reading with you from Wishful Thinking by Frederick Buechner. The power of sin is centrifugal. When at work in a human life, it tends to push everything outwards toward the periphery. Bits and pieces go flying off until only the core is left. Eventually, bits and pieces of the core itself go flying off until, in the end, nothing at all is left. The wages of sin is death, is St. Paul's way of saying the same thing. Other people, and if you happen to believe in him, God, or if you happen not to, the world, society, nature, whatever you call the greater whole of which you are a part, sin is whatever you do or fail to do that pushes them away, that widens the gap between you and them, and also the gap within yourself. Religion and unreligion are both sinful to the degree that they widen the gap between you and the people who don't share your views.
God is alive and well in my garage, and God and I are perplexed about a variety of different issues and topics. God and I are perplexed about first sin. A terrible thing has happened to sin. It's not as popular as it used to be, or the word at least. Too bad. It's a useful concept. It has to do with falling short. A universal human experience, I think. The root words in Hebrew scripture are to miss, as in to miss the mark, or another root, to revolt or rebel. Now, there are several ways of thinking about sin. Violating taboos is one of those, which is why sin is so linked with sexuality in our culture. But I think a more profound notion is cutting us off from our highest relationships. It's part of the web that forgets or denies that we're part of the web. The presumption of total independence and autonomy rather than interdependence and cooperation. We are social beings. We realize our highest potential in relationship with others. As Frederick Buechner puts it, sin is whatever you do or fail to do that pushes the world, society, nature, God away, that widens the gap between you and them, and also the gaps within yourself. I championed restoring some idea of sin associated with the way we honor or defy our interrelationship with others. Given this understanding of sin, I ventured to suggest that widespread economic disparities should be considered more sinful than personal moral lapses. So I'm in favor of salvaging sin and honoring the guilt that sinful action engenders, the guilt that calls people to repentance, to teshuvah, turning away from those behaviors that miss the mark, that isolate people, that widen the gaps between them. God is alive and well in my garage, and God and I are perplexed about sex. Couldn't mention sin without sex popping up. As Buechner writes, sex is sinful to the degree that instead of drawing you closer to another human being in their humanness, it unites bodies, but leaves the lives inside them hungry and more lonely than before. I could wish that American culture weren't so obsessed and messed up about sex. On the one hand, sexual suggestion is used to sell all sorts of products, perfumes to cars. More and more blatant sexualizing of media images leaves nothing to the imagination. And healthy sexuality depends upon a keen and inventive imagination. God is alive and well in my garage, and God and I are perplexed about truth-telling. It's highly distressing to live in a time when telling the truth seems to be an optional public virtue. The problem with exaggerating or even lying all the time is that it dulls our capacity to tell the difference between truth and fiction or truth and delusion. For the past 5 years, at least, we've endured a steady erosion of our shared sense of what's true and reliable because political leadership at the highest levels have abandoned any commitment to tell the truth or support the notion of intersubjective agreement about what's true upon which the life of a healthy democracy depends. This erosion of our shared commitment to truth may be one of the most pernicious and damaging losses we have suffered. It will take us years, if not decades, of reaffirming honesty and truth to repair the damage. As UU's, our fourth principle affirms a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Never in our lifetimes has the principle been challenged so fiercely or needed more urgently. Let us recommit ourselves to continuing our search for truth and telling the truth as clearly and bravely as we can in the face of doubters, skeptics, cynics, and those who would seek personal benefit from the ignorance of others. God is alive and well in my garage, and God and I are perplexed about civility. I've been deeply distressed by the erosion of common civility. My mother was a stickler for manners. Courtesy, politeness, etiquette may seem trivial to some, but it does help preserve civility. They're not called social graces for nothing. We are deeply polarized, politically, religiously, economically, spiritually. Polarization is partly the result of people staking out positions from which they will not move. It's a form of absolute thinking and acting contrary to the spirit of compromise that has made our republic function as effectively as it has over the past 245 years. Incivility is a product of too much certainty and too little humility. It may be time for all of us to admit that, firm as our convictions are, they may be flawed. Which leads us back to sex. Civility totally out the window in our current public debates about LGBTQ identities and rights to equal protection under the law, particularly with regard to gender binary and transgender people, their needs and aspirations. Too often, discussions don't happen at all, only slogan shouting matches so that ideas never get explored. Diverse ideas and points of view need to be expressed in ways they can be heard, and people across the range of experiences and perspectives need to commit to listening to one another. God is alive and well in my garage, and God and I are perplexed about love. I've always been fascinated by love, the word with its myriad meanings. I love Bosco. Love is a many splendid thing. Love your new haircut. What's love got to do with it? Faith, hope, and love abide these three. And the greatest of these is love. So many meanings loaded on the back of one four-letter word. At the core is the notion of positive regard. Love is a useful factor to guide ethical action once you grow beyond mere obedience to rules. I grew up with situation ethics, the notions of Joseph Fletcher. What would love have me do in this particular situation? You could pose dilemmas. For example, a child will starve if you don't steal a loaf of bread. The dictate of love says that preserving a life is a higher good than refraining from stealing. Love has always been more complicated and more elusive than I hoped it would be when I was younger. Figuring out the loving thing to do is often very hard. Jesus' great commandment, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, is endlessly challenging. One of the hardest parts is to get loving yourself right. When does self-love become self-absorption? Self-regard become narcissism, self-esteem become arrogance. How do you deal with situations where loving another seems to demand violating love of yourself? So many questions. Meditations upon love bring us inevitably back to, you guessed it, that little three-letter word, sex. What marks a healthy relationship between sex and love? To answer this, I think we need a new theology and ethic of human sexuality for the 21st century. An ethic grounded in the biblical worldview seems too limited, given all we now know about human sexuality. Gender is part genetics, part social construct, the same with our sexual orientation. A huge range of variability with regard to sexual feelings, attraction, behaviors predominates in human culture. And there's a huge range of sexual behaviors that are ethical, but not conventional. Given our hunger for love and its manifold physical expressions, how can we live a sexually ethical life? As a gay man, I'm on the sexual fringes of society anyway. From where I stand, we do well to let go of some of our long-standing taboo-based ethic and move forward to forge a more responsibility-based ethic. God is alive and well in my garage, and God and I are perplexed about purpose. I had lots of time during the pandemic to read 2 works by Viktor Frankl, both published by our own Beacon Press. I reread Man's Search for Meaning, reflections from Frankl's time as a prisoner in Nazi concentration camps, and read for the first time Yes to Life, in Spite of Everything, based on lectures he gave in 1946. I heartily recommend both books to you. Frankl writes, life ultimately means taking responsibility to find the right answers to its problems and to fulfill the tasks which it constantly sets for each individual. This challenge applies to us during these pandemic and post-pandemic times, just as it applied to him in his own experience of imprisonment. Our task is to figure out what life is asking of us at this moment and to do our best to respond in a purposeful way. As he outlines in Yes to Life, we give life meaning not only through our actions, but also through loving and finally through suffering. Finding, or rather creating, meaning and purpose in our lives in the midst of the challenges life delivers us is a daunting and noble task to which each of us has been called. It is my hope that this congregation is a place where you find mentors, friends, wise counselors, and companions for this meaning-making journey through your lives. God is alive and well in my garage, and God and I continue to be perplexed about virtual community. It's taken me a long time to warm up to the internet and virtual community. I was not an early adopter of the World Wide Web. I was slow to get an email address, to figure out how to navigate the web, and I'm hardly an expert now. Yet, here we all are, worshiping this Sunday morning in virtual community. Thank God for the technology that makes it possible for us to come together this way. Imagine what the past 18 months would have been like without Zoom and Skype and email and smartphones, internet and World Wide Web. For many of us, with all its flaws, virtual community has been a lifesaver. It has enabled us to see and hear one another across distance and physical isolation. Sometimes the safe distance of virtual community seems preferable to face-to-face, fully embodied community, which can be messy and awkward. It may be a challenge for all of our congregations to transition from virtual to embodied community in real space and time when that becomes possible. We may find that we're out of practice being members of an actual rather than a virtual community. At the very least, we'll have to upgrade our wardrobes and not show up in pajamas. I suspect we'll master the challenge of real community pretty quickly as we rediscover the joy of touch, of shaking hands and hugging, the sounds of crowds gathered, the uplift of singing together. But until then, let's continue to give thanks for virtual community and do our utmost to stay connected with one another in whatever ways we can. Which brings us back to that perennial 3-letter word, sex. The internet is a particular challenge where sex is concerned. It offers ready access to graphic imagery of all sorts to view or download in the privacy of your own home, office, whatever. And it offers ample opportunities for people to make connections, perhaps anonymously through screen names, never divulging their real identities. Poses some questions for us. What kind of society will evolve if we continue to promote false representations of self as an acceptable alternative to true ones? What will happen to real, live, fully embodied human sexuality if virtual sex proliferates? God is alive and well in my garage, and God and I are perplexed about racial inequity. I couldn't leave my garage without sharing a few thoughts about the most urgent, persistent, and pernicious social issue in our country and world today, racial inequity. Black Lives Matter, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and so many others, demonstrations around the world, violence in Oregon, Kenosha, Wisconsin, Louisville, Kentucky, claims and counterclaims about racism, white supremacy, caste, 350 years of racial inequity in America. Racial inequity is clearly an issue that has come to the fore once again in America, and that won't go away. The longer I live and the more I read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, Isabel Wilkerson's Caste, Widening the Circle of Concern, the report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change, the more I realize my complicity in sustaining unjust social systems from which I benefit as a white man. These are the same systems under which persons of color suffer chronic inequity, worse health outcomes, greater poverty, inability to amass family wealth, inadequate educational opportunity. The deficits are many. This pandemic gives us a chance and a unique opportunity to reset individual, congregational, national priorities to address this chronic inequity, to acknowledge its roots in a long history of white supremacy culture, and to commit to doing whatever we can to remediate and remedy these long-standing injustices. Which brings us back to that familiar three-letter word, God. Where is God in all these garage sale musics? Sin. God is the cosmic coach on the sidelines, urging us to close the gap, to own that we've missed the mark, to try again, this time with better aim. The coach with seemingly infinite patience, who believes that next time we can and will get it right. Truth-telling. God, the author of truth, is the arbiter of what is reliable and trustworthy, the source of the insight and courage that enables us to speak our truth, even when it goes against conventional wisdom or opposing views in the world. Civility. God is the cosmic sage calling us to deeper humility, urging us to keep on talking to one another, even across what seems to be unbridgeable divides. Love. God is the cosmic power that can sustain our positive regard, not only for people we like, but for people we don't like, for people we don't know, and most challenging of all, for ourselves. Purpose. God, the architect of purpose in human consciousness, is the one who lures us to make meaning in our lives each day through action, through love, through perseverance in the face of suffering that each of us will inevitably experience. Virtual community. God is the cosmic webmaster, sending us reminder emails, urging us to take full advantage of opportunities for maintaining connections with one another virtually, but also reminding us to look forward to the day when we can rediscover the real, felt frustrations and joys of truly embodied community. Racial inequity. God, the creator whose image all human beings share, is the power that sustains all who labor and struggle for greater equity throughout human society. Or in the words of 19th century Unitarian minister and abolitionist Theodore Parker, the one who bends the long arc of the universe toward justice. And sex. God is the cosmic trickster who delights in the madness and ecstasy of human sexual experience, who is constantly amazed at its startling variety, and who wants us to see that playfulness is reverence in disguise. God is alive and well in my garage, and especially during this pandemic and post-pandemic period, I continue to be grateful for all that perplexes and puzzles me. May it always be so. Shalom, blessed be, inshallah, aho, shanti, amen. Let us all sing hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
So we're going to move beyond that. And I'd like to first thank you all for being with us this morning. And a really special thanks to my colleague, the Reverend Ned Wight, for his challenging message. Ned is scheduled to be our first in-person guest minister in November, when he will have a very different kind of sermon, one that focuses on the work of the Unitarian Universalist Servants Committee, a topic I know that's of great interest to all of us. And we hope you'll join us again next Sunday for a wonderful service. In the meantime, we hope you'll check out our website, uufsma.org, where there's lots of information about the many events going on that you can take part in, as well as information about how you can become a member of this wonderful community. Right now, we hope you'll stay with us for some community time after the postlude. You'll be invited to join a breakout group for conversations, and there'll be questions in the chat that can serve to start off that discussion. As the postlude title suggests, there's plenty of good room for you in our conversation groups, as well as in the fellowship in general. Ned and I and a member of our welcoming team will remain in the main room, which you can also are welcome to do as well. If you're new with us today, we particularly invite you not to select a breakout room right away, but to stay in the main room so that we can greet you personally. And now we go back to Ned to close our service.
Our closing words are words of Barbara Peskin, and the extinguishing of the chalice words are words of Elizabeth Selly Jones. Barbara Peskin first. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now, as Tom has said, we will listen to close our service to the traditional American spiritual, Plenty Good Room.